Twisted here with the Opener Sorcery, and today I want to go ahead and talk about avatars. Now, this video follows a recent one that was recorded and likely will precede this one about cycles and circumambulation. We're talking about the general nature of cycles. One thing that is touched upon in some sense is reincarnation. Now, in tandem with that, it seems pretty warranted to go ahead and discuss the topic of avatars in of itself, which, generally speaking, a avatar is a reincarnation, or I should say an incarnation of a deity coming, or an entity of some sort, coming down to the physical world and existing as a human, having that human sort of experience. Now, in me going ahead and doing this video, I'll say the inspiration for this, the credit goes to a video from the Dark Black Magic YouTube channel, one that is currently not there, I believe due to some sort of copyright issues or some sort of YouTube shenanigans and all that. But the topic in of itself for that video was Bobby Hemmett talking about Michael Jackson, in the sense being an avatar of Archangel Michael. You know, the power of the name Michael itself, and, and different sorts of figures, without, throughout the past, say, century or so, pop culture icons and such, including, say, Michael Jordan as another example, and so on, that, have made a large impact on the world in some way, shape, or form, embodying the energy, the archetype of Archangel Michael. Now, going ahead and discussing, actually before I get to archetypes, I do want to go ahead and say that, initially speaking, when thinking about the term avatars, the first thing that probably comes to mind is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the movie directed by James Cameron called Avatar, which at the time of recording, I believe there are scheduled sequels that have yet to release, so we shall see if they happen to come about. But those are two pieces of fictional media that you can go ahead and check out that kind of convey these sorts of concept of an avatar, in a sense. One being more so like a Eastern mystic sort of perspective in Avatar: The Last Airbender. The other one being a little bit more secular, mundane, sci-fi sort of flick with Avatar the movie. For those who haven't seen it, but they're pretty popular, so chances are, you probably come across one or both of them, or some sort of mention of them, up until now, but just stating the obvious just in case, you have not. Now, when talking about avatars in of itself, the general idea, once again, is that these are entities, these are deities, gods, goddesses, some aspect of divinity or something higher than oneself, right? Like something that is beyond the scope of a human existence, coming down and incarnating into flesh and blood. And when it comes to that sort of thing, there is, I guess you can say there's many different entities, many different sorts of beings, right? But to go ahead and generalize them, right? We can go ahead and look at archetypes, right? The concept of archetypes, real quick, is that, common traits, common themes within different sorts of base templates for personas or aspects of human existence. Now, for those who are looking to want to get into understanding archetypes in of itself, two sorts of avenues that you can go ahead and do that is study the work of Carl Jung, as well as delving into the different planetary aspects in a magical sort of sense. For example, right, like to name a planet, right? Venus. That is, from the Greco-Roman mythos and lore, the goddess of beauty, love, so on and so forth, right? And in the her alternate name being Aphrodite, in the Greek understanding, but yet she is the encompassing sort of feminine archetype, right? In that sort of regard. Whereas opposite to her, in that sense, is Mars or Aries, more so of a masculine archetype, god of war, taking action, all these sorts of things. So those general sorts of themes being present as archetypes in of itself. And the idea is that for either or of these, deities, entities, right? Or many others that, let's say they want to incarnate as humans for whatever reason, shape, or purpose, that they go ahead and do so, come into flesh and blood, and in some regard are able to, you could say a little tiny piece of them, or maybe you can say totally, to whatever scope or scale. I leave that up to you to ponder about. But in any case, them coming to live a human existence, walk around us, be able to, know what it's like, to be able to breathe the air as we do, to go see the forest for the trees, to be able to experience human love, to be in different shapes and forms, to be able to go ahead and experience heartbreak, as a human, all these different sorts of things that we take for granted, to breathe air as we do, to go ahead and experience the rays of the sun, or, the quiet night time, or whatever. I'm kind of just going ahead and making tons of examples, but you get the point. Now, in them going ahead and doing so, right, we as humans, right, have this phenomena where at times, whether it's through some sort of regression therapy, or say a young child, especially, not exclusively, but in many cases has been such, a young child remembering that they had a previous life and can recall the details of such. And, I'll go ahead and talk about a couple things here in regards to past lives and reincarnation that a good author to check out, who covers the topic quite a bit, is Dolores Cannon. And also that right here, based on a recent sort of conversation that was had about the subject, I happen to have a image here that serves as an infographic for reincarnation by the numbers. So let's just go ahead and take a look at it. And let's see. So I don't know exactly where this is from in terms of the publication, or the source of the infographic. But in any case, reincarnation by the numbers. Tucker's research has yielded interesting patterns within the cases of children claiming memories of a past life. So the median age at the time of the previous person's death is 28. Most children claiming memories of a past life are between the ages of 2 and 6. So this infographic is kind of focusing a little bit more so of the phenomena of children going ahead and recalling previous past lives and such that they have experienced. And to continue on with the statistics that are presented here, 60% of children who claim past life memories are male. Roughly 70% of the children claim they died a violent or unnatural death. In those cases, just over 70% of the deceased individuals were male, the same ratio as in the general population. 90% of the children say they were the same sex in a previous life as they are now. The median time between claimed death and birth is 16 months, and 20% of children claim memories of the time between death and rebirth. So, delving into those figures right there, once again, that has to do with the general notion of human children having memories of previous life, particularly at a rather young age, before, they could remember such details, or should be able to have, enough source material from things that they've experienced or witnessed or consumed to be able to go ahead and verbalize and come up with a particular story or narrative. So, in going ahead and having looked at that, right? Past lives, reincarnations, this sort of phenomena, going through what Eastern religions and belief systems called wheel samsara. These are things that, apply to us humans as well as different entities, deities, so on and so forth. But this particular talk is kind of focusing a little bit more so of like deities, entities, so on, incarnating as humans. At some point, it'll probably be warranted to talk about past lives and reincarnation in a little bit more so human-centric sense. Whether it's me doing something by myself or talking to Devi and or Lono or whomever else. But right now, we're going to be talking primarily about avatars still. So, one thing I will go ahead and denote is that there's many people online on YouTube that you can find who actually go ahead and believe that they are, in fact, avatars and incarnations of these different sorts of entities and, deities, so on and so forth. And I leave it up to you to assess whether said individuals making these claims happen to be so or not, depending on whom you come across. But I'll just go ahead and name a couple, examples of there being a couple people who believe that they are the incarnation of Kalki the Avenger, who, in something I'm going to be covering in just a moment, is an avatar of Vishnu. And also archangels, quite a bit, is another sort of classification that gets a lot of claims that they're, in fact, oh yes, I, Mr. Joe Bob, I'm an incarnation of, say, Archangel Michael or Archangel Gabriel. But yes, I'm sure you can find plenty of individuals online if you just put enough time and effort and look. But I'll say that you can find them not even just on YouTube, but say on Discord or say on whatever sort of social platforms they use to network. And I can say for myself, they're, being in spiritual, magical, occult sort of online communities and circles, I've come across my fair share of people who happen to go ahead and make this claim a distinction for themselves. And in doing so, right, I've kind of had instances where it's like, what? Maybe there might be some credence to it in some way, shape, or form, or not. In other cases, I've been a little more skeptical and such. There's also cases of not necessarily that the person themselves particularly believes it, but that other people believe it. And they go ahead and worship them or put them on a pedestal as though they are. Even if that person's like, I don't really know if I am. Whether it is, that they are and they're being humble or they don't know themselves well enough, or it's not necessarily the case and you got yourself some people who are delusionally following and blindly doing so and such. But I'm not going to necessarily make heads or tails of any specific situations or not. I leave this up to the listener to go ahead and come across individuals and go ahead and discern it for themselves. Now, going on with the topic in of itself, right? So, what are some examples from a religious, from mythological sort of like basis and understanding where it's been codified that, different deities, different sorts of entities have come into the world and experience what it's like to be a human, in terms of imparting some sort of spiritual knowledge in many cases, or maybe going ahead and just frolicking about having a good time. To go ahead and talk about the frolicking about and having a good time, I'll say that this is more so of like a, not necessarily living an entire lifetime, but more so just like a experiential thing for like a weekend getaway, is in the Greco-Roman mythology, where several of the gods, but primarily Zeus a lot, happens to go ahead and change into a form of a human, or even other creatures, but a lot of times human, to go ahead and mess with people or go ahead and have his way with women. And not only those sorts of examples within Greco-Roman pantheons, but in other cases as well, in other sorts of mythologies. Not, they don't have the monopoly on it. But in terms of I guess what you can say are like major savior-like figures that I've come across that, happen to be avatars in their functionality, whether they're listed as such or not, based on different belief system. We have Vishnu in Hinduism, the cosmological aspect, of the Trimurti Vishnu, and having many different sorts of avatars. Now, the most infamous of these, of course, is Krishna, who is kind of like the Jesus sort of figure, for those who are not necessarily aware, and more so Western-minded or based in Abrahamic, Christian sort of belief systems. Krishna happens to be that sort of primary guy, the quote-unquote son of God, if you will. Not necessarily, like, regarded to as such, but, takes on that sort of parallel. And not only Krishna, in terms of being there being avatars of Vishnu, but as I stated previously, Kalki the Avenger, that is the prophesized sort of, next Avenger, the 10th and final Avenger of Vishnu, that is yet to come into the world, and with them, he will be a warrior and such, similar to the idea of Jesus Christ, right? Who you could say in functionality is an avatar of Jehovah, Yahweh, God the Father, many different names and titles for the Judeo-Christian, patriarchal God and such, that happens to go ahead and make themselves manifest. And, Jesus Christ having been God incarnate, the quote-unquote Son of God, and then going ahead and having, died on the cross, resurrected, and transfigured up in heaven, and is prophesied to come again and have the second coming of Christ. And similar to Kalki the Avenger, Jesus Christ, Yehoshua ben Yosef, Yeshua ben Yosef, Muslims go ahead and call him Isa, but in any case, coming about and coming with a sword, being more so warrior-like than a philosophical teacher, which is how he was, when he was spreading his messages, spreading the gospels, going ahead and doing his ministry and such. Now, to go ahead and dial back to different sorts of incarnations of Vishnu, there isn't just Krishna or Kalki, but as I noted, 10 different avatars of Vishnu. So, in going ahead and just stating off a couple more examples, we have Matsya, who is like a anthropomorphic fish. We have Varaha the boar. We have Narasimha the man lion. And I'm not going to lie, if I butchered any of those pronunciations, so be it. But those are just a few other examples of other avatars of Vishnu. Now, also, there is an idea, there is a belief that, for some Hindu followers, as well as Buddhists, that Siddhartha, I'm getting tongue-tied a little bit, Siddhartha Gautama, who is known as, the current Buddha, the popular Buddha that, we're all likely familiar with, he happens to be considered at times an avatar of Vishnu, in of itself. And you can say that whether or not, there is that sort of idea of Buddha being a avatar of Vishnu or not, that from a Buddhist perspective, there is believed that there will be a second coming of Buddha, or there will be a next Buddha, you can say. That the world's next Buddha is going to be called the Maitreya and such, and bring back the Dharma. And for those who are unaware, that means the path of righteousness. Now, not only within Buddhism is, Siddhartha Gautama venerated as, a aspect of Vishnu sometimes, or that, there will be another incarnation of Buddha, but that even the Dalai Lama in and of itself is reincarnated from previous Dalai Lamas. And, there's a actual particular sort of process that Buddhists go through, the Tibetan Buddhists go through to figure out and denote, okay, is a child actually a reincarnation of the previous Dalai Lama, or a previous Dalai Lama, I should say. And, this includes several different exercises of trying to have the child guess certain, what certain objects may have belonged to previous Dalai Lamas and such, to show evidence that, oh, this belonged to me in a previous life, so I recognize it now, and things of that regard. And you know what? I think that is where I want to go ahead and leave it for right now, in terms of talking about avatars, talking about, deities reincarnating, or incarnating, I should say, into human form to experience it, and, just bring about a good handful of examples for you to go ahead and chew on, and to go ahead and check out, more of that subject if it piques your interest. And once again, as I stated previously, for those who are interested in past lives and reincarnation and of itself as a subject, I definitely go ahead and recommend Dolores Cannon as one of several authors who you can go ahead and find out more on the subject on. I will go ahead and add as a little edit right at the end here of a good movie to check out for a fictional representation of the process of trying to figure out whether someone is in fact a Buddha or a Dalai Lama or something of the sort, is the film The Little Buddha, starring Keanu Reeves. So, with all that having been said, this is Twisted with the Open Sorcery, and stay frosty, niggas. Peace.